Hello, you beautiful fellow weirdos. How are you? Let's talk about Monochromatic Maestro. I've been doing some research for an upcoming build, and while I was scouring the interwebs, I came across a surprising amount of bad information from Reddit, and a few other places I can't remember, revolving around this mod. Info almost as bad as that video I made with the Bungie Going subscription-based rumor, but I want to talk about it. And seeing as I'm in the business of making odd builds, dealing with damage stacking, and all things mod related, I figured this is something we should discuss even this far into the season. I mean, some of the info I came across was pretty bad, and what scared me more was the number of players agreeing with it, or talking about how great that absolutely wrong info was working for them. So let's start off with the basics. This artifact mod gives a 10% damage buff to both weapons and abilities as long as they're matching elements, in PvE only. So if we deal arc damage with a weapon, we'll get 6 seconds of arc ability damage, and vice versa when we use our abilities, granting the buff to our weapons. Almost like how the Heart of Inmost Light buffs our other two abilities when using an ability, without the recharge rate of course. We can refresh the timer on most abilities like the Hunter Throwing Knife, Titan Baby Bonk Hammer, or Shoulder Charge. Unfortunately, most of our abilities take longer than 6 seconds to recharge, but that's okay because there's also no cooldown on the mod either, so we can keep activating it as much as we want. And no, elemental time dilation does not extend the timer. I'm sorry. Keep in mind that this mod works either solo or in a fire team. If you are strictly a solo player, your best bet is to use Solo Operative, which works all the time and grants a 15% damage buff instead of 10. Now that we got the basics out of the way, let's get to the details and how it stacks up. Instead of going through every ability, we'll just go over what it doesn't work with because that's a much shorter list and we all have games to play. Basically, it doesn't work with any class abilities. This means no Arc Souls, Child of the Old God, Shatter Dive, or Barriers even if we damage an enemy with them. It also doesn't buff the damage of Arc Souls after using an Arc weapon, which is something I've seen players claiming numerous times. It also doesn't work with Acrobat's Dodge on the Hunter or Phoenix Dive on the Warlock even if we have Heat Rises active. Surprisingly, it doesn't work with the Diamond Lance on the Titan either. I say surprisingly because I always thought the Diamond Lance was a melee, seeing as it activates Heart of Inmost Light. Go figure. Everything else that we consider an ability like melees, grenades, and supers are fair game and proc the damage buff on weapons as intended, excluding the healing nade on the solar subclass because that'd just be weird if it did, right? And the same thing applies to any weapon matching our subclass. It doesn't matter if it's a heavy, special, or even a stasis primary slotted weapon. They will activate the mod for the 6 seconds of ability damage buff. And speaking of buffs, when it comes to global debuffs, empowering buffs, and stacking, this mod is considered an amplification mod, which means it falls in the category of other mods like Power of Rasputin and Font of Might. Since these are all amplification mods, it means they can stack freely with other amplification mods like the ones I just mentioned, along with all empowering buffs, debuffs, and most exotic traits or weapon perks. A good example would be combining the Charged Light mod, High Energy Fire, which is an empowering buff, with Font of Might, which is an amplification mod. Add in Monochromatic Maestro, which is also considered an amplification mod, and stack all this on top of a debuff like the Tractor Cannon. These can all synergize with each other, which is what makes this mod so potent. I've seen a lot of players calling it an empowering buff and arguing about what does and doesn't stack with it. This all could have been avoided. If you ever have any doubts about stacking buffs or debuffs, hands down the best place you can go for this info is a spreadsheet created by Court. It's no joke a time and lifesaver when it comes to Destiny stacking. I'll leave Court's Twitter info and spreadsheet link in the description, so please check it out. That's the video. I wanted to cover the info I found online that was false, but still keep it short and sweet like a PSA. I hope this helps some. I apologize for making you listen to my nasally voice. I tried to get back to normal before I made this video, which is why I didn't upload it last week. Remember to be good to one another, and have a fantastic day. Thank you!
And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. I don't fucking take smoke, I'ma poke a hole through you, choking's overdue. Come at me and you won't get any older, dude, crack your holder too. Heating up inside of me, blood so violently, thanks for trying me. Now it's finally time to see how this rivalry becomes a dynasty.